Have you ever opened a Laravel project and wondered who created a table and why the table was created? Or you pushed your code and your database got broken? So, in the next 8 minutes, I will show you how Laravel Migration solved all of that in a clean, safe, and professional way. If you are a beginner or even a working developer, this video will save you hours of debugging your code. Okay? So, welcome back to Coding with Emmanuel, where we make coding simple at all levels. So, what problem exactly does migrations solve? Before migrations, developers manually create tables in phpMyAdmin. As you can see in my browser, this is my phpMyAdmin. So developers come here, you create your database and the tables and the feeds there. But there is a problem with this. And the problem is you cannot version the database. You can have a version of it, just like the way you have your code versioned. And the teamwork consistency with this is a problem. And above all, the problem is rolling back whatever it is you've done in here becomes a problem. Now, so Laravel migration treats your database like a code. It get it versioned, it makes it repeatable and safe. So you can easily roll back what you've done without affecting any other thing and without breaking anything. So now, what exactly is a migration in Laravel? A migration is a PHP file that describes how your database table should look. It defines the columns, the data types, the indexes, and everything. The key takeaway I want you to take out of this is just have it at the back of your mind that if Git controls your code, then migrations control your database. Okay? So Git gives you the flexibility of controlling your code, having a version for each of your deployments, right? So the same thing happens to migrations. So migrations control your database. So just take that as your watchword. So Git controls your code, migrations control your database. So then, how do you create your first migration in Laravel? If you create a new Laravel project, you will see something like this. It comes by default in the migrations folder under the database folder. There are some migrations that come by default with Laravel. But if you want to create your own migrations, how do you create that? Using Artisan command, you can actually create your own database and you give it the name of the table. So how do you do that? You easily do that by doing PHP Artisan. You easily do that by typing in your terminal PHP Artisan make migration, then the name of the table you want to create. So in my case, I'm going to say the name of the table is YouTube users. You hit enter. Then this command will create your migration. Now you can see that a new migration has been added to the list of migrations here in the migration folder. So Laravel automatically names migrations with timestamps so that it knows the order to which it will run those migrations. You see, the new migration I created is the recent one. So, and you can see they all have timestamps attached to them. So this is how Laravel handles migration. So after we've created our migration, the next thing we want to do is to start putting things in order. When I say putting things in order, it means we now want to create the exact table that we want. We want to create the columns that are going to be in the database table. The columns that are going to be in the database table. Now, for us to create the table, what we'll do is you use schema to create, then the name of the table you want to create, which is YouTube users, right? Then you specify, you pass a function to it, which is going to use the blueprint. And the blueprint is going to be table. Then Now, so this is the shell that is going to create your table. So when we run PHP Artisan migrate, which we're going to explain later, it will run this migration by calling this up method, then create this table the YouTube users table. Then inside the YouTube users table, then we have to specify what are the columns that are going to be in the database there, or what are the feeds that we need in the database table, or what are the feeds that we need in the database table. So first, I'm going to create the ID. So table ID. By default, this is going to become an auto increment. This is going to auto increment. Then I want a feed, which is going to be string of the username. Then I want a string of password. Then I want age. Um, so want the age, which is of course going to be nullable because we don't want people to um, we don't want people to pass it to us. So it should be if they wish to give it to us. So sorry, there's a typo here. Now it should be fine. Now, and at the end of it, we have a timestamp. So this timestamp is what we create when the record is being created, and it's going to create another one, the updated at. That is going to give us created at and updated at. Now, so after we've created this, what we need, of course, it will be kind of us to have the person's name as well. So once we've created this and we run the migration, what will happen is Laravel will call this method and use it to create a table. But before we run the migration, I need to change some things inside my env file, and that's going to be under my database settings. So I'm not using SQLite, I'm using MySQL. Then I'm going to be using the full information here, and in this case our database name is YouTube Learning, and of course the username is root with no password. So now, after we've done this, we can run this migration and our table will be created. If you look at the database that I have, in the database here, you see the database is actually empty now. There are no tables in it. So how do we then run our migration? Laravel monitors each of these migrations using timestamp, like I mentioned before. Now, so for us to execute these, what we have to do is to come to our terminal and type PHP Artisan migrate. Okay, so by the time we run this, it's going to look at all the migrations in here and run all of them. Then to keep track of all the migrations in the migrations table. Remember, we did not create any migrations table, but by default, Laravel will create the migrations table to keep track of all the migrations that we've executed, and this will help us to know when we are trying to add something to a particular table and we execute the PHP Artisan migrate on it. It will let us know that there is nothing that has changed in a particular migration, or there are new things that can be added to the table, or maybe the feed actually exists in the database table. So now let's run PHP Artisan migrate. Now, as we can see, after running the PHP Artisan migrate, we can see now that the 4 migration files that we have in our migrations folder, they've all been executed, which means there is no error that we have here. Okay. Now, if we go back to check the database now and I refresh this, we'll be able to see that we'll see that all of the tables are now being created and they are being tracked in the migrations table. Now here we have. So you see all of the tables, this is the one we created, and these are the ones that came with Laravel. So all, if you check this, the structure of these YouTube users, you see it's exactly the same thing that we have in our migration, which is name, username, password, age, and we say timestamp is going to generate created art and updated art for us. So here we are now. We have all of that, right? So that is how Laravel migration works. It makes it easy for you to create your table, and you can version it. You can at any point drop anything from the table or even add another thing to it. For every migration, right? For every migration, it should be reversible. Okay? That is, you should be able to roll it back. So if you run PHP Artisan migrate rollback, it will look at the table, then drop whatever it is you want. Let's say we want to drop this particular table from the database now. So we want to do schema drop if exists the YouTube table, and we run PHP Artisan migrate. Then we pass. Before we're just using migrate. Now we want to do rollback. So you see now, all of the four tables, they all have a drop option where we can easily drop them. You can see from all of the migrations. So what this means is all of these tables are now dropped from our database. If we refresh this now, so as we can see from our database, it's all gone, right? So if we run PHP Artisan migrate once again, then all our tables should be created now. Now, all the four tables are there, and we can go back to check, and they are back. So everything migration must be reversible. If you cannot roll it back, then there is something you are doing wrong. Okay? So then for you to modify an existing table, it is pretty simple. All you have to do is you go back to your terminal and do PHP Artisan, make migration. Then in my own case now, I want to add phone number to the YouTube users table. Currently we do not have that. So I can say add phone, add phone to YouTube users. Then a new migration will be created. You see it. Now I can come here, then so you see it's already specified that this is the table I want to add to. Then what I can do now is I'll just say table phone number. Then if it's nullable, it means it's not necessary for users to impute it. But if it's not, if you want it to be compulsory, then we'll remove the nullable, which means users must provide it, right? Now, once we are done with this, now let's do something now. I will do PHP Artisan migrate. Then that's all. So it will go back and look at the table, then add that particular feed to it. Now, if you look at the structure of YouTube users now, we should have phone number added to it. Now, you notice that the phone is added at the end. Okay, there is one thing that Laravel allows us to do. We can specify before or after a feed. So we can come here and say, and we say this should be after, then you name of the feed that you want it to, maybe after name, right? But in our own case, we did not specify this. That's why it was appended after the updated art. So, and this, if you're able to do all of this, it gives you the flexibility that you want, and that's That makes Laravel migration so easy, and of course, it brings peace to the life of developer as well. So, if you understand migrations, you already think like a professional Laravel developer, and what that brings to you is the ability to be able to remain flexible as you are versioning your code, you are versioning your database alongside. So like the video, subscribe to Coding with Emmanuel, and drop a comment if you want the next video on Laravel relationships or CDAS. See you in the next one. Keep building.